Saints are in camp. They've broken Metairie camp to head to L.A. for a little bit, take a break from the heat, get some good work in, and on Sunday they will take on the Los Angeles Chargers in the first of 3 preseason games. And I honestly believe this is going to be as fascinating a preseason game as I can remember watching for the Saints. I mean, really. And we'll talk about it for the next couple of days. But I want to get some Cam Jordan sound. To be quite frank with you, the listener, I don't want to misguide you, mislead you. I don't want to breach your trust. We had Cam Jordan sound. We also had some sound from Kellen Moore. And I said, you know what? I don't really need the Kellen Moore sound because he's not the best soundbite. Has literally zero to do with how well he coaches. None %. Zero, sir. But it's not great for our purposes. Cam, generally, pretty insightful, often entertaining, and he's been one of the greatest players in the history of franchise. I'd rather hear from him on a few topics. So let's start on Cam as he now, in his 15th season, is going through another coordinator change. And when you play football for this long, you're going to have a lot of coordinator changes because coordinators change in the NFL a ton. I would suggest that Cam has had reasonable consistency at defensive coordinator, being that his career spans so long. He had Dennis Allen really calling the shots for that defense for a long time. But he is changing, and they're looking at a different defense. So what does Cam think about adjusting to a new look?
I don't even know what number D coordinator this is for me. You know, I sort of seen some of these fronts from the Rob Ryan days, for sure, the Spag days. You know, I've seen influences. It feels like every D coordinator of past has sort of been touched this defense. So I'm finding my familiarities. There's one year where I think it went by a Jack name. I consider myself a defensive end and a complete one at that. I don't know how many more. There's probably 3 of us left. But, you know, if it calls for me to be an edge, label me as such and let me ride. At the end of the day, I want to do whatever's best for the team. I want to win here, and I want to make my case known that the focus this year is figuring out how to get our wins each and every time. You know, there's a time where we could rely on one player or 2 players to get you 6-7 wins. We're in it. It's going to take all 22 on offense and defense, 33 on special teams to get this job done this year.
So it is an adjustment for Cam from the Dennis Allen days. Clearly the Saints are going to a different front, going to a different scheme. And the responsibilities are going to change even for the guys up front. And that's Brandon Staley's preference. So Cam was kind of asked, okay, well, you've seen this Brandon Staley defense now. What does it look like?
Man, I think this idea of multiplicity, as you see, each and every day, it's like we're installing a new front, new wave, new whatever. But at the same time, it's sort of true in the idea that we're trying to get our edges to play as fast as they can, and I love to hear it. You know, the faster we play, in my mind, defensive ends, edge rushers, you know, whatever your edge component is, that's your premier position. And then, you know, you work in or out, however you see fit. But if the faster they play, the more we crash down these walls, the tighter we make the game, the tighter the pocket is for a quarterback to pass out of, the more we can affect the game.
We heard Sharif yesterday on with us talk about how he's seen Cam Jordan drop into coverage more times in this training camp after a week than he has maybe for the last 10 years combined. And I believe that. Like, it's a different look, and you're going to see that. Now, I don't think Cam is going to play as much as he has over the last 15 years. I think that you're going to see more Carl Granderson, more Chase Young, and you're going to see some different looks from those guys, and then Cam will have his situations to come in and play. And I think that's the best use for Cam at this point in his career. You're talking about a guy who just isn't quite the rusher that he once was, isn't quite the striker he once was. He showed us some flashes at the end of last year. Once Dennis Allen moved on and they kind of changed the way they were doing some things late in the season, it didn't matter for the record. They were already out of everything. But Cam he was more productive at the end of last year than he was at the beginning of last year. So maybe there's something still left in the tank there that he can give them, and you're going to see a multiplicity of roles, which you talked there at the top of that segment. And then kind of the question is, okay, what actually is your role in this defense in 2025?
I see myself as every down, and then they'll direct me accordingly. My job is not to see a role. My job is to say, hey, how can I help my team win? I train with the way I've always trained. I train with the idea that I can impact each and every play, and it's up to you to use me accordingly. If you want a sledgehammer, there I am. If you want a jackknife, I can be that too. If you want somebody who just is a primary pass rusher, guess what? I don't know if you know this, but I should be in one of the pantheons of great pass rushers in the 2000s alone, let alone this team. So whatever that you need, I'm there for it. I think we have a strong edge group with Chase, Carl Granderson, as well as Isaiah Foskey, and I mean we've seen some talented things from those guys. So I can see why we push towards the future, because that future is going to be electric.
I like that little quote there from Cam. He's obviously angling at the Hall of Fame there, which I'm perfectly fine with. I think his resume stands up as a potential Hall of Famer. I'm not ready to say it's a slam dunk, but I like his chances. I mean, I think he's got a real opportunity to do that. And he says he thinks himself as an every down guy. And I think that's a fair thing to say. I just don't think he's going to play every down. I think he can do most of the things you need him to do, but I would suggest if it's third down, I want Young and Granderson out there and not Cam. Not that he can't do it. He can't do it as frequently as he once did. You're talking about a guy who was as complete a defensive end as there was in the NFL for a long stretch. I mean, I'll go through his sack numbers from 2013 to 2021. 12.5, 7.5, 10, 7.5, 13, 12, 15.5, 7.5, 12.5. And that is a heck of a run as a defensive end in the NFL. Now you look at the last few years, 8.5, 2, 4. And those numbers, 2 and 4, come in 17 games each. So it's not like, well, he got hurt, so he could. I mean, he's out there, he's healthy. He's just not as productive as he once was. So how do you get productivity out of him? Well, you limit his snaps. So I think he's going to play some on first and second downs. I think if there's an injury, he can go in there and certainly give you snaps. I think he's certainly a better option than Isaiah Foskey at this point, who I have very little confidence in. I hope he proves me wrong, but that's just the case, how I feel about it. But that's what Cam Jordan is. Now, he did pressure the quarterback a little bit last year. And the question becomes, can you continue to get those pressures? And then to add to that question, and then can you turn them into sacks? And this is what Cam had to say.
I remember having this conversation, Max Crosby's second year with him, about like, dog, I'm getting all these pressures and not converting to sacks. That's just it. Each one of these pressures has potential. You have to be able to capitalize on potential. Sometimes it's that perfect combination of corners taking away that first read, so quarterback has to pat. It's the, hey, I got there fast enough and I have an interior push where he can't step up. Sometimes it's just more than what you give him, but at the same time, you have to keep on giving. The idea of football is you never know when it's your play, so you have to be there each and every time.
To me, this is Cam Jordan's biggest role in the team. You heard the beginning of that soundbite. I was talking to Max Crosby. His biggest asset that he gives to the New Orleans Saints is talking to the younger players and helping them through difficult times and teaching them about how to be a pro and what stats really mean and how to win games, because he's won a ton of games in New Orleans. He's never going to be a 10-sack guy again. That's not going to happen. But he can help. He can help lay the foundation for the next great Saints team. He won't be on it. He's not going to be on the next great Saints team. But he can help the young pieces that will be with that kind of wisdom, that kind of motivation, that kind of advice that you just can't get from everywhere. And I believe this in the pro game as well as the college game, even down to the high school game. I think messaging and leadership that comes from the players, the fellow teammates, as opposed to the coaches, is even more impactful. Because sometimes it can feel like coaches versus players, like butting heads. Teammates are together. They're peers. They're going through the same thing. And so for me, that's Cam Jordan's biggest contribution to the organization moving forward. Being a mentor to the younger players and helping them in whatever way they need help. And that's kind of puts a bow on my thoughts on Cam right now, but he did give sound on the quarterbacks, which is the most interesting piece to this entire puzzle. So I'm not going to leave the segment without getting Cam's thoughts on Rattler's progression as well as what he's seen from the quarterbacks.
Man, I think Spencer this camp is gotten confident. Not that he needs any more confidence, but with his checkdowns. His ability to say, hey, if I don't see it in the air, I can beat him with the feet. You've seen him spring out the pocket a lot more, open it up, sort of gives that early on Russell Wilson vibe, right? And that's probably high praise because he won a Super Bowl that year. But, I think that with his growth and just being in the league for the second year in a row, he's got that sort of chip on his shoulder. You've still got Shuck, who's showing some brilliant stuff. When he decides to run, he's sort of slippery. So, he's deceptively fast. You never would have thought about it, but he can run. And, of course, Jake Haener, he comes in practice with this determination that nobody ever talks about. But he's a little gunslinger. He's not little, he's 5.
He's not little. But just a little look there at the quarterbacks from Cam Jordan. Probably the most respected player in that entire locker room now without dispute since Tyrann Mathieu moved on and decided to retire. So that's a look at the black and gold. We'll have a lot more over the next 2 days as the media gets settled out there in Los Angeles. They're taking in some practice. We'll be able to check in with some of those folks over the next couple of days. So looking forward to that. And then Sunday's preseason game. I can't wait to watch that one. I'm going to settle in and take that entire game in because I think very rarely do I lock in on preseason football. A lot of guys are going to get cut, but with the Saints and that quarterback situation, you got to watch it. So I'll be locked in on Sunday for Saints and Chargers. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.